I am not a financial advisor, and I never give financial advice on this channel. 100% of this content is for entertainment purposes only.
The magic dragon lived by the sea and frolicked in the autumn mist in a land called Hanali.
Hello everybody, hope you're doing well. It's Lane here with MetaShackle. Today I'm going to be going over the liquidation heat maps as well as some of the charts on quite a few different cryptos. Just wanted to take a moment to thank everybody for all your well wishes and all the prayers that you've been sending my way. I really appreciate it, as well as a big thank you to everybody who has donated crypto to the channel and also all of the people who have joined my Patreon in the last couple of days. You won't regret it. So let's not waste any more time and let's get into this. First off, taking a look at the Bitcoin charts, we are currently trading at about 95,100. We are trading right here around the upper quadrant of the equilibrium zone. This looks extremely bullish. We came down to this zone right here at about that 72,645 level that I spoke about in a previous video, have since crossed through the Gaussian channel up to the upper range, and you'll notice that this last candle is forming a nice pin bar bouncing right off of the equilibrium line, which is the green line in the center of the charts. This looks very bullish. I think we're about to see a really fantastic move in Bitcoin here very soon, which is very likely to come up and test the upper range of this upper trend line right here around the 4.5 line on my Fibonacci scale. So coming over here to take a look at the heat map, this is very interesting because you can see that we actually have a lot of liquidity right here in this area going all the way down to about that 90,000 level. But the highest concentration of liquidity on the charts right now is actually in this area right here. It's not just very likely that the algorithm is going to come up and actually swallow this liquidity, but it's probable. And the best part is that once price gets up into this zone right here, this is likely going to act as rocket fuel, giving Bitcoin the momentum that it needs to push even higher. I think we'll see a move somewhere around that 99,000 to about 102, 103,000. But if it gets enough of a boost in this area, we might see it push up to that upper trend line on the charts, anywhere from around that $110,000 to $112,000 quicker than you might think. And something that you want to pay attention to when you're looking at this chart is we have a ton of liquidity still down in this area, just above the 80,000 level and below the 84,000 level. But pay attention to what happens in the charts. This is how the algorithm likes to function. You can see that right here, price came down, touched right here, and as it was working over here, even though there was a lot of liquidity down in this area, price did not come back down to this level right here. It left this liquidity here intentionally. If you look at this upper range here, it intentionally left this small band of liquidity that you can see in this area when it hit this top right here, then coming down, bouncing up, then taking it out. This is intentional. It was leaving this little tiny bit of liquidity right here so that it could chew it up later. Once it took out that liquidity, which at the time was the highest concentration on the chart, it then fell back, intentionally did not take out this lower liquidity here, and then started to move upwards. And ever since then, it has been engineering liquidity points, as you can see. And what I mean by that is by not coming down and taking out the previous lows, you get these buildups of liquidity around these points, working all the way up. The algorithm can come back and raid at a later point. You can see that it also, when it came up here, it did the same thing, leaving a little band of liquidity, coming back down, leaving liquidity on the lower side, on the sell side, moving up, and sweeping that previous high right here, taking that band of liquidity, coming back down, sparing this liquidity here, and saving it for later. As price migrated, it did the same thing right here, not coming down to this low as it did right here, engineering more liquidity. Then the price continued to move up into this upper band right here. Once it chewed up that liquidity, it fell back down, doing the same thing, sweeping this previous high high and leaving this huge band of liquidity right here. Now this engineers liquidity because as the price is falling down, short positions who sell into the markets are setting their stop losses up here. They also have liquidation points. And as price falls down to where we are right now, you can see that it's chewed in pretty good to some of this liquidity, but is still intentionally leaving liquidity behind to raid later. In this case right here, it did drop down, sweeping this lower candle right here, which generally gives price more momentum. It's also consolidated right here into a small band of accumulation. Now, if I had to render a guess taking a look at this chart right here, that the algorithm is absolutely going to be coming after this first. Depending on how much momentum it gets coming through this will determine how high the price goes, whether or not it's to that 99,000, pushes up to about that 102, 103, or whether or not it gets a big burst of momentum out of here and goes up to that upper trend line at around the 110, 112,000. But at some point, you can expect that once it's taken out all that liquidity up in this range and even higher, that there is going to come a time the algorithm is going to come back and hunt this lower liquidity here as well as here. That doesn't mean that we won't see Bitcoin go to much, much, much higher levels, but it's not going to leave this liquidity behind. It's going to come and chew up as much of this as it can. If you look down here, especially in this area, once the liquidity gets exhausted and is pretty much wiped out, you get these black bands like this. The algorithm switches from hunting sell-side liquidity to hunting buy-side liquidity, basically just completely losing interest in this. So as far as Bitcoin is concerned, I would keep your eyes on that 99,000 to about 102, 103,000 level. If it punches through that, odds are we're going to go to that upper trend line somewhere in that 110, 112,000 range. Now, taking a look at the Ethereum charts, it is forming a very interesting chart. After coming up here and hitting the upper trend line at about that 4,100 level, it has since fallen back with a big liquidation candle right here, which fell through the equilibrium zone. You can see that it literally got stalled out right at the equilibrium line before collapsing down to where we are now. We recently hit this low down here at about that 1,380 mark and have since been migrating upwards. We are now hitting the lower range of the Gaussian channel, which as you can see is acting as a little bit of resistance. Now what you want to watch is you want to watch for price to break above this trend line right here. There's likely going to be quite a bit of resistance in this area, but at the same time, we have a weak doji right here. This is a waterfall pattern that I tell you about all the time. So odds are it's going to come right up to this area, somewhere in this area, hitting that weak doji. If it can take that weak doji out, break through this trend line and break out of this Gaussian channel, odds are we're going to see a good move upwards and will likely come back down, testing off of this trend line and then moving towards the equilibrium line in the center of the equilibrium zone, as well as testing the 200-day moving average wherever those might correlate. If price starts to migrate upwards, you're going to see the 200-day moving average start to gradually move upwards. So there's a good chance that they could meet somewhere in this zone where we could see them face off to determine whether or not price action is going to move up. And we're kind of at an interesting place because we've already started well into the bull run, and the Trump election pump brought a lot of crypto prices, especially XRP, way up from where they were previously. And generally, in these times of price appreciation, at least as far as crypto is concerned, once Bitcoin has run, you will see that money bleed into Ethereum as Bitcoin is pulling back. And then Ethereum goes on a nice run. Then the money bleeds out of Ethereum and goes into the altcoins, which this season I do believe that XRP is going to play a much bigger role in that than we have seen in any other previous cycles. And I do think that XRP is going to take precedent over all of the altcoins, as well as take away a lot of the glory from Bitcoin and Ethereum. Now, as we take a look at the heat map, you can see that we have a lot of liquidity resting right down here at around that 1525 level that has been left behind. It actually swept this low right here with this candle coming down here, which is a liquidation candle, as you can see, a long wick and a body at the top, forming nice pin bar before breaking out of here. Pay close attention to how this liquidation candle fell down into this liquidity pool and what its reaction was right here. This is what I call a reverse waterfall. Having this doji right here, odds are price is eventually going to come back to this point, because if you look at these areas, price almost always comes back to these points in key locations. As you can see here, major breakout, weak doji, price came back, swept that doji, taking it out. Then this next candle swept that low before breaking out. Now we have this candle sitting here with all this liquidity. We've moved upwards. The algorithm has been generating liquidity points here and here, and here as well, but the biggest concentration of liquidity that we have is right here, hanging out at about that 1,724 level. So there is a possibility that price could come down and actually sweep this liquidity previous to moving up, but there's also a chance that it might leave it behind, engineering even more liquidity, moving up into these upper liquidity pools, taking out this high right here at about that 1,875 level, clearing out the liquidity in this area, moving up to about 1,900, perhaps even higher, previous to coming down, taking out this liquidity. And eventually, it's also going to come for this liquidity right here and everything in between it. So this isn't the easiest one to read, but the algorithm is definitely engineering a lot of liquidity over a very large spectrum of price here. And at some point, we're going to see something very incredible happen, whether it be to the upside or to the downside. So this will definitely be one you want to keep your eyes on, especially as Bitcoin starts to fall in price, because odds are we will see Ethereum start to come into it right along with XRP, taking a lot of that Bitcoin money that's bleeding out. So taking a look at Sol, we can see that the price came up, hit this high right here at around that 295 level. Price then fell down through the equilibrium zone, coming down here to the lows, to this lower trend line right here. It did not touch this fair value gap at the bottom of the pattern, but pretty close. Gave a nice dragonfly doji right here before reversing, heading up, and it is now broken into the Gaussian channel and working towards that upper range. The other thing that you want to pay attention to on this chart right here is it's forming a nice inverse head and shoulders type pattern right here off of this trend line, which is actually moving into equilibrium. Keep an eye on where this ends up, because odds are what you generally see is it will be parallel or very close to it with this line if head and shoulders pattern is tilted like this one is. So a lot of times you can kind of guess that bottom range, or at least in the ballpark, by putting a trend line right down in this area. So there's a good chance by the time this comes down to set this right shoulder, we might see it match somewhere with this center line on the Gaussian channel and this trend line, or somewhere in that particular area before it moves up. I generally tend to be a little conservative with these, so I would go off of this low right here just to be a little bit safer. Because if this bounces off of this lower trend line and ends up breaking out bullish, we're going to go up to this upper trend line right here. We're going to go up to this upper neckline right here and attempt to break out of that. If we can break out of this, getting up into the equilibrium zone, past the equilibrium line, which is the green line in the center of the charts, we could see something very interesting, and it could make a spectacular move. Taking a look at the heat map, you can see that it has cleared out a lot of the liquidity in that area and basically left it completely empty right here. We do have liquidity down here in this area spread out as it's been generating liquidity on these points, working upwards to where we are seeing the price now. But the greatest concentration of liquidity is right here, resting at about that $154, $155 level, just above this previous high. And the odds are, if this comes up and takes this out, that's going to give it some rocket fuel, propelling it through all of this liquidity right here, which consists of limit sell orders, liquidation points, as well as stop losses, and could take out this previous high right here. Unfortunately, on this chart, we can't see if there's any remaining liquidity up above this, but if there is, it's probably pretty sparse, as we can see right here, getting thinner and thinner. But if we can take out this previous high, zapping this liquidity right here at that 153, 154 level, it has plenty of fuel up here to get it to that point. That's really not that much of a difference moving to the 157, 158 level. And once we clear this out and the excitement kicks in, we just very well might see that head back towards that $200 level, depending on how much momentum it has left. But it's definitely set up to be able to make a pretty good move to the upside from current prices. And it's very nice that it has that inverted head and shoulders pattern, because that pattern right there, if you measure it out, could easily take it up into this range. And that algorithm is not going to quit right here. It's going to go after this liquidity, especially in this pink range. The algorithm almost never lets this previous high just sit there. It will very likely take it out. Now moving on to the theta charts. We had this big move up here, came up and set this high. We came back down, came up, set another high. This, if you don't know right here, is what ICT, or Inner Circle Trader, who designed Smart Money Concepts, known as SMC, this is what he calls a turtle soup pattern, with this low here, trading up in a rounded fashion, coming up, setting a high, and then just completely falling down, taking out the previous lows. Not every time, but a lot of times. This would have been a great long-term trade for anybody who was able to capture it. And if you look up the trading pattern called turtle soup, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Now, price came down here to this lower range, which is basically the lowest prices that we have seen in theta since well back here into about that November, December of 2020 range. Everybody who's bought any theta during that time has paid more for it than what you could pay right in this area, assuming that you bought it. But I think it's going to give you one last chance. As I predicted in a previous video, it came down, took out these weak dojis that are in the red right here, came up to this fair value gap. It has now filled that gap, got rejected off the bottom side of the Gaussian channel, has fallen back through the fair value gap to the bottom side. And the last time I talked about theta, I was talking about the chance of it coming and taking out this low down to this range right here, and then it might be a good idea, not financial advice, to ladder some limit buy orders at this low down here to about this white line at that 56 range. Because if this does come down, you may be able to fill a few of those orders and catch it for the ride back up. Now, taking a look at the heat liquidation map, you can see that price came down and cleared out all of this liquidity down here. This was the highest concentration in this area and this area right here, which is basically sitting down at that 163 mark. This low right here, this is the candle that I was just talking about that's sitting right about that 159, 160 level. And you'll notice that there's a lot of liquidity down here. It's cleared this last band, but it's left these. There's a very high concentration right here. Odds are if it comes down to here, because of this gap in the liquidity here, if it does decide to come out and take out this previous low, sweeping it, it's going to dig into these two biggest bands of liquidity right here at about that 58, 59 level, where you would want to have those buy orders laddered anywhere from this bottom down to about that 58, perhaps even the 57 level. But looking at this right here, there's a good chance, since there's such a lack of liquidity in this area right here, that it's going to come after this and attempt to take this out as well as this. Even though this is more likely, odds are it will take this out and at least sweep this low right here before moving up, because the next stage is going to be taking this band of liquidity here as well as this band of liquidity here that's resting above this high right here at about that 81-cent level. There's not a ton of liquidity up here above it, and it basically goes black up here, but it might get a boost out of the liquidity in this area once it chomps on it. But I think there's a very, very good chance that it's going to sweep all of this before moving upwards to chase after this buy side liquidity on this side. So keep in mind, it's likely going to want to take out all this sell side, then go after the buy side liquidity, regardless or not of what Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP do. But at the same time, it has formed a nice dragonfly doji right here. So there's a chance this might come up a little bit. We see a big liquidation candle or some quick movement to the downside, taking a day, 2 days, 3 days, a short period of time previous to moving up. So keep that in mind if you're planning on acquiring more theta, and if you do ladder some buy orders down here and they do get filled, you're going to be getting the best price anyone's gotten in about 5 years. It's a good opportunity, and that's not financial advice. Moving on and taking a look at ADA, we came up and set this high right here during the Trump tweet, which was a pump and dump. Price fell back down to the 200-day moving average, fell down even farther below that, right here to my -3 doji, pushed below it, setting this lower trend line. Price then went upwards. We've entered into the Gaussian channel and are struggling at the center line right here in this area. We just set a pin bar right here at the -2 fib. Can you see the accuracy of my fib levels? How it's just resting right on top of that -2, and will likely make an attempt at this upper trend line right here sometime very soon. If it can break out of this, which is going to be challenging because the 200-day coupled with this trend line is not going to be easy. We also have this reverse waterfall doji right here, and price is at least going to come up to that. So it could be similar to what we've seen on the Ethereum charts, where this point right here is lining up with this upper trend line, breaking through this, getting some momentum, coming back. Odds are it might come back and do a retest of this trend line before taking a shot at the equilibrium line here in the center of the equilibrium zone, and then attempting to move higher. So there's a couple things to keep an eye on this chart, and I'm not exactly sure how it's going to go. I would assume that it's not going to be easy getting through this, but at the same time, last time we were down here doing this and it wanted to move right here, it just popped right through all of it, just completely ignored it. So we know that ADA, when it wants to, can move like nobody's business. And this was literally one day it made this move. So the power that ADA has to move, it could just tear right through this whole thing moving up and just rip right through here. And if it does, you're going to want to watch these previous highs right here in this area as well as this area, because once we get above those, it could get really interesting very fast. Now, taking a look at the liquidation heat map, we can see that there is a lot of liquidity down here sitting at this low at around that 59-cent level, as well as these lows right here hanging out at about that 60-61 level. ADA has set this low right here, which has swept these previous lows, clearing out most of this liquidity here and moving upwards. The highest concentration of liquidity on the entire chart is right here above this high at about that 73-cent mark. Now there are 3 bands right here that are loaded with liquidity. It looks to me like the most likely thing is that price is going to move up, attempt to take these out in this range, which will likely give it the momentum to keep chewing on this, taking out this previous high right here, which at that point we'll have to take another look at it, see how things have changed, see where the liquidity has been distributed, and make a decision there on whether or not we think it's going to go higher or stall out and maybe have an area of consolidation, kind of similar to what we've seen in this area. But overall, I think there's a very good chance we're coming to this area right here, taking out this high. Now taking a look at the medium of exchange for the next 100 years, known as XRP. If you've seen my previous videos, you know that what we have right here along this trend line is we have a reverse dragon pattern with the tail right here, the back foot right here, coming up, setting the hump, coming down right here, bouncing off of the number 6 line on my Fibonacci's. It did not come down here to the fair value gap at the bottom of the pattern. Price bounced up, and as you've seen in my last video, I was talking about how this area right here would likely be where we would see a turn upwards before eventually seeing what will likely be a liquidation candle, a type of a flash crash, moving down into this level right here, because we have this huge liquidity range right here. It's basically spanning from about that 182 range all the way to the 202 range. Now what pushed down here was held by the 200-day moving average, as you saw last night and this morning, and is starting to gain momentum on the center line in the Gaussian channel. If this breaks above this center line, which it looks like it has been struggling and subsequently at the same time forming the dragon's head, odds are it will move up into this area. And if we're going to see this rejected and come after this liquidity in a liquidation candle, there's a good chance that it could happen right here. If we get through the equilibrium zone, as I've predicted, we could get up to the weak doji in this area right here, and this, in that 270 range, Anywhere from this equilibrium zone, from the 260 to that 270 range is where I think we will see the rejection dipping down into this liquidity right here before continuing the move upwards, which would be the breakout of this reverse dragon pattern. If you'd like more information on that, just go back and watch my last 2 videos that have the dragons on the thumbnail. This is playing out very, very nicely. This is pretty much what I expected, other than I mentioned in my update video there was the possibility that it might leave the liquidity below these points here, manufacturing liquidity all the way up on these points to raid at a later date, but it didn't do that. It did what I mentioned was most likely to happen in the first dragon pattern video, which was to sweep all the liquidity out of this before moving upwards, then seeing the move down somewhere in this range, coming down to take out this liquidity to get the rocket fuel it needs to continue to move higher for the beginning of the breakout in the month of May, which correlates with the XRP breakout chart that I have been talking about for about 7 or 8 months now. So moving on to the XRP heat map, you can see that we have a huge band of liquidity right here. The 2-week dojis that I have marked on my chart are marked right here off of this low and off of this low. There's also another one right here at this waterfall point, and as you can see, as I keep talking about time and time again, it came right back down to that area, sweeping that weak doji for that breakout point, taking out all that liquidity, and is now starting to move upwards into the pattern. So there's a good chance that it's going to leave all of this liquidity behind till after coming up here through the equilibrium zone, taking some of this buy side liquidity, then wicking down into this area to zap out most of this liquidity. I don't know how low it's going to go. I have a hard time believing that it's going to come down here to this 182 range, although we do have a weak doji right here marking this waterfall point. But I think it's most likely that we will come down and sweep this low at about that 191, 192 level before making the move to the upside and starting the breakout in the month of May that I've been talking about in repetition, leaving this liquidity behind to come and raid at a later point, if not just completely ignore it moving forward, as there's not an incredible amount of liquidity down here to chase after, then chasing this liquidity to the upside and likely taking out this point right here and then moving upwards and eventually taking out the all-time high right there at around that 339, 340 level and moving into price discovery. Once we get to price discovery, you better hold on because it's going to be incredible. The FOMO that is going to rush into XRP is going to be absolutely mind-blowing. We've been waiting for this for a very, very long time. Then you couple that with the fact that the SEC case gets completely settled and taken care of and out of the way. If that announcement comes during that process, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to see a really, really big candle. And we might get lucky and get tipped off to this in advance because, as we all know, all these people are inside traders. They just don't get held accountable for it. If you and me take part in insider trading, we'll be in handcuffs in 5 minutes. But those guys, they don't care what they do. So you might see a move that doesn't quite make sense somewhere along the line, which is going to be all of those insiders jumping the gun and getting their money in the markets. Then a day or two later, that's when you'll see the announcement. So that'll be another thing to kind of keep an eye out for, because I've seen that time and time again. Even though these lawsuits against Ripple have been getting dragged out for many, many years, killing the price of XRP and causing tens of thousands of people to lose the money that they had invested in this with absolutely no accountability. None of these people will ever be held accountable. Nothing will ever happen to them. They can do whatever criminal shit they want. They've got a get out of jail free card. So don't count on any of those people ever being held responsible, because it just doesn't work that way. When you're in the club, you're in the club until the point that they decide to sacrifice you as a pawn so that they can make a bigger move down the road, of course, which is hopefully what they're going to do to a lot of these people that we see in power now. Because they've been acting as pawns for so long. We're now starting to see a lot of these pawns getting taken out. And one way to kind of spot that and even guess who it could possibly be is their name, as silly as that might sound. If you think about the FTX debacle, it was basically Sam Bankman-Fried attempting to be a bank. Well, what happened? Sam Bankman got arrested for fraud. and one of these days it wouldn't surprise me if they let him out of jail and we have Sam Bankman freed. And if you look at Puff Daddy, look what he was involved in. Some horrible, horrible things, of which I will not mention on this channel. But one of the things that he was doing goes right along with his name. His name is Sean Combs. Well, what do you do with the comb? You groom. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate each and every single one of you. Please do me a favor and hit the like button. It doesn't cost you anything and it helps the channel, and I would really appreciate it. If you would like to consider joining my Patreon, I currently have a sale going on right now, 25% off of your first month. All you have to do is use the coupon code META, all capitals, and that will be good through May. I would really appreciate it. So thank you so much. Have a great day.
Yeah, you thought Puff was just the name of the boy's magical dragon? Uh-huh. Not too quick on the uptake, huh, Jack? Why don't you ask Denny who's puffing the magic dragon? Not onto that one, huh? Surprising for a big CIA pulse detector. Ooh, hey, check my pulse on this question, Jack. Do I think you're a psycho? Yes. What? Oh, you like my little gift? What? The Jerusalem what? What? I can't hear. Jerusalem tulip poozly what? What? Oh, you don't know shit about flowers. What's that? You want me to what? You have another question? Sure, I got one question for you. It's, can you deal with that?
When you're a fool in love and nothing goes the way you plan, and no one cares and no one understands that you're a fool.